When we are looking at remedies for breach of contract, the first thing to note about remedies is that there are two different types of remedies available in law. There are remedies that we call common law remedies, and then there are remedies that we call equitable remedies. And to understand the difference between these two types of remedies, and the difference is important, you need to understand the difference between common law and equity. In England and in Pakistan and majority of the jurisdictions, Commonwealth jurisdictions, this distinction is an important one. The distinction primarily historical. It essentially looks at how the law developed in England. There was a time when England was divided into tribes. The kind of centralized government that we see today did not exist. The kind of judicial and legal system that we see today did not exist. They were tribes. And each tribe had its own customs and traditions. And it was those customs and traditions that decided the outcome of any dispute. And mostly, of course, it would be the tribal leaders who would decide all those disputes, keeping in mind the customs and traditions that they had. The problem with this approach was that each tribe would have its own customs and its own traditions. And while it worked very well within the tribe, because all tribals essentially were bound by the tribal code, there was no coherent system of dispute resolution across the country that we call England. So each tribe having its own custom and tradition means that if there was an inter-tribe dispute, a dispute that involved two or more than two tribes, there would be no mechanism to resolve their dispute, because especially when those two tribes would have conflicting customs and traditions. In an effort to streamline these so-called customs and traditions, in an effort to bring out a uniform set of rules for the entire country, an effort was made, and an activity was carried out on the orders of the king, who ordered his advisors to look at the customs and traditions of different tribes, and to extract from those differing customs and traditions such rules as could apply uniformly across the country, and then perhaps could be codified into a singular legal system which could be used regardless of whichever tribe was involved in the dispute. That was the aim of the activity that was then carried out. And in line with the orders given by the king, a unified set of rules was extracted out of the then prevailing customs and traditions. That unified set of rules, which was to apply to the whole of the country, came to be known as common law. Quite literally, because it was common to the entire country, all the citizens were bound and subjected to this law. So it was common to everybody, as opposed to the previous system where each tribe only had their own customs and traditions. The idea was good. As you would agree, you would now have one uniform set of law for the whole country. Everybody knows what that law is. The only problem with common law was that law has to evolve. You can't just codify it and just sort of have a book that lays down all the laws, all the rules, and just leave it there and forget about it. It has to evolve. With time, new problems will arise. With times, new views will be taken. And dispute resolution, as perhaps it was handled 100 years ago, may not be or should not perhaps be handled in the same way today, because of the change of circumstances, because of the change of the needs, a change in needs, because of perhaps new knowledge that has since come to fore. So law has to evolve, and that evolution can only come when you continue to update your laws. The problem with common law was that updation was not happening. The rules were very rigid, the rules were very, very inflexible. And because those rules were made on the direct orders of the king by the advisors of the king, those rules very often were very technical. To a common person on the street, they made very little sense. And that's a problem because law is made for the people. They are the ones who are expected to follow law. And if they don't understand law, they don't understand procedure, they don't know what their rights are, what their obligations are, the purpose of law fails. And so, therefore, even though the idea behind common law was a good idea, the execution of it and perhaps the nature of the beast was such that slowly and gradually it was felt that common law was deficient in many respects. People who went to the courts that had been set up by the king to dispense common law came back with a feeling that perhaps they were not given justice. What they wanted was not something that the judges were willing to give. And we can't blame the judges either, because judges were under orders to just dispense what was the common law, what was written in the book. If something was not written in the book, then really judges couldn't do much about it. Ultimately, when this sense of discontent grew, this sense of injustice grew, people decided to petition to the king, and they decided to take their disputes directly to the king, so that the king could resolve their disputes without worrying about the book, the common law. And the king would do that initially, and ultimately, when these disputes grew in number, the king asked his deputy, his advisor in law, the chancellor, to start giving justice to people without having to worry about common law. So, a parallel system of dispute resolution, a parallel system of justice came into existence. So you had the common law, which had the normal courts, which provided the normal justice to people, and that was still the primary source. If I had a dispute with you, I would go to the common law courts and I would try and get my remedy there. But side by side, this new parallel system of justice also started, whereby chancellor on behalf of the king would deal with those cases where perhaps common law was found deficient. And because he was acting directly under the orders of the king, he did not have to worry about those deficiencies that existed in common law. He would only provide justice as he saw fit. So, quite aside from what was written in the book and what not, he would just do whatever he felt was right. And he had that authority from the king. That justice, that parallel stream of justice that flowed from the chancellor's office, or chancery as we call it, that came to be known as equity. So you had common law and you had equity. Two parallel systems of justice existing in the same country. Of course, not an ideal situation. A country should have one legal system and everybody should be expected to follow that legal system. But as I said, because common law kind of like was an exercise where bits and pieces were extracted from different customs and traditions and then were codified into a unified format, the nature of the beast was such that it was always going to be found deficient over a period of time. And equity, this parallel stream of justice, was primarily just filling in the blanks. So wherever common law was seen to be doing injustice, equity would step in and equity would provide that justice. Ultimately, it was decided that these two parallel streams should be merged, because as I said, it's not an ideal scenario where citizens of a country have to choose between the normal stream and between the special stream that we called equity. So ultimately an effort was made to unify the two different streams of justice, and then one singular set of courts was established. That singular set of courts exists today also. But the judges in that singular set of courts today have powers both to give you common law, which is still the primary choice. But where they feel that common law would not lead to justice, the same judges today have the right and the powers to bring in equity. That is to say, they have the right to keep the law book to a side and try and do what is fair in the circumstances. Of course, as we'll see, there are rules relating to equity also, but for the most part, equity, the word itself, comes from fairness, from justice, decisions of conscience. So that power does exist with the same judges who would today, first of all, try and give you common law remedy, but if they can't, if they feel that would lead to some unjust result, they also have the power to give you equitable remedies. And I hope now it is clearer to you that the two types of remedies that I started the lecture off with, common law remedies and equitable remedies, there are both types of remedies that are available to a person who goes to a court claiming breach of contract. We just need to understand what are those common law remedies, what are those equitable remedies, but in as much as the distinction between the two is concerned, that's primarily historical. That primarily deals with how law developed in England. Common law first, and then equity came where common law was found deficient. We will look at all of these remedies, common law remedies as well as equitable remedies in the lectures to come. For now, this is it in terms of remedies.